In this movie I'm going to introduce you to about 5 different ideas for ways of making your programming code more understandable. So I'm going to be showing you about use of comments, use of functions, use of brackets, and indenting, and the concept of a block of code. This program that we've got here has got none of those features in it at the moment, so we'll put some of them in it. So here we've got 2 pins used to drive a motor and 2 more pins used to drive another motor. So it would be helpful if we explained what these pins are doing. So I'm going to hit the tab key a few times and just get away from my code a bit, then do 2 forward slashes. Anything that comes after 2 forward slashes is a comment. It's not part of the program, it's just put there to make the program more easily understood. So I'm just going to explain that pin 7 and 8 control the left motor, and here I'm going to explain tab till I get my comments lined up, that pin 12 and 13 control the right motor. So that's an example of comments. Okay, now down here we've got a block of instructions where we are setting the values of all of these pins 7, 8, 12 and 13. So I'm just going to explain what's happening there. So what happens is that the left motor goes forwards in pin 7 is high, and similarly the right motor when pin 12. Okay, so that means that this block of 4 commands it makes both motors go forwards. So if both motors are going forwards, the robot's going forwards. Now, every time I want to make the robot go forwards, I'm going to have to write out all of that. And that is just a pain in the neck. So I'm going to show you how we can simplify that as well. So I'm going to copy all of those commands. In fact, I might cut them. And then I'm going to go down to the bottom of my program, which is there, and I'm going to add a few bit of a space in there and paste those commands there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a thing called a function, and I'm going to go void, and I'm going to call the function forwards, and then I'm going to go bracket because you always need those brackets when you define a function. Then this block of 4 commands is going to become a block of code. So you define blocks of code by starting off with a curly bracket. So I'm going to put the curly bracket there. And then I'm going to go down to the end, and I'm going to close the curly bracket. And that has now defined this function, which is called forwards. I've also introduced you to the idea of block of code, a block of code being a bunch of commands which occur between the starting and the ending of a pair of brackets like this. Another way to highlight what parts of code are in a block is to use a thing called indentation. So I'm going to highlight this, and I'm going to go to Edit, and I'm going to increase the indent, which I could also do by just putting the tab key. And then I highlight it. So now you can see, if you look along here, you can see this bracket opens, the code gets indented all the way down to the block of code finishes, and it comes back to the closing bracket. And you can quite clearly see that the closing bracket is underneath the opening bracket. Now, I'm just going to show you another thing. If you're interested in the question of where is the opening bracket that goes with that closing bracket, just click beside it like that, and it'll put a little frame up there around the opening bracket. Does it actually better this way around? If you click on the top one, it puts a little frame around that one, but it doesn't rub it out, so you can still see. So when you get lots of brackets and they're all nested inside each other, that's a really good thing for showing you which brackets go with each other. Okay, now we've got this function called forwards, and that has been written right below our code. So I'm going to do this here. I'm going to do a slash and then a star, and then I'm just going to do a whole row of stars. Oops. I think it was stars I want. So you can see that that's grayed out everything below it. So it started off a comment section and it's turned everything into comments. And I'm going to put some words, going to write something along here. Function definitions. Then I'm going to go down one more row and go back to all the stars and then do that. So this section of the code is now not part of the program, it's just a comment. But what it's allowed me to do is show that this code up here is my program. That's my main program. And then the main program finishes with that bracket, and then below in this region here is just me defining the functions which I'm going to use in my program. So if you put something like this in there, it makes a real clear delineation from where the end of the program is and where the start of your function definitions are. So we now have this function called forwards, and I'm going to go back up here and I'm just going to go forwards. And that replaces that whole block of code. Okay, you'll find that that same block of code is here. And that same block of code occurs here. And that same block of code occurs here. Now I'm going to look at this block of code. I'll explain what this is doing. When we've got 12 high and 13 low, that makes the tab. I'll go back and have a look and see what it does. 12 high and 13 low makes the right motor go forwards. So I'll just put that up there again. Control copy that. Go back up to where this is. There. There's a semicolon missing there, I'll just put it back in. Okay, so the right motor goes forwards, and if they're both low, if both pins are low for a motor, means the motor is stopped. Okay, so the right motor is get running and the left motor is stopped. So what that means, oops, tap out to there, this makes the robot turn left. Yep, if the right motor is going, the left motor is stopped, the whole robot will turn to the left. So this block of code here is a block of code for making the robot turn left. So I'm just going to take it out, go down to the bottom of my program in the function definition region and paste that, and I'm going to create that into a function. So I'm going to go void turn left, open a curly bracket to define a block of code, go to the end of it, close the curly bracket to define the block of code, highlight these lines here and indent the code which is inside the brackets. And so I now have another function which is called turn left. So now I can go back up into my code, and where this code was, that's the turn left. So take that out. Here it is again. And here it is again. So now let's have a look at what we've got. We're going forwards for 1 second, and then we're going to turn left for 1/4 of a second, forwards for another second, turn left for 1/4 of a second, forwards for 1 second, turn left for another second, and finally forwards for another second. And I think I'll just take this bit out. So let's see how many times we've gone forwards. Once on 13, twice 17, 3 times 21, 4 times. Yep. So we've run forward 4 times and turned left 3 times. So what that is actually going to do is, if you imagine a softball diamond, that would make the robot run around the softball diamond. So when it is going forwards, it's going one base from one base to the next, and that takes 1 second. And then while it is turning left, it's turning to point in the direction of the next base, and it takes 1/4 of a second to do that. Then it just runs forward to the next base. And you can see now that the program is way more easy to understand than when it was just a whole string of digital writes. We've used meaningful names for the functions, and the program is a lot shorter and much clearer. So what we've covered in there is putting in comments, the use of brackets and blocks of code and indenting the blocks of code, and the use of functions.